When Philip of Macedon was marching through Greece, conquering one city-state after another, he sent a chilling message to the Spartans. You are advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city. The Spartans, famous for their blunt, concise speech, sent back a one-word reply. If. That Spartan if was a symbol of raw power, a defiant readiness for battle. It was a challenge. Fast forward to today. In 2026, Europe uses that same word, but its meaning has been completely inverted. Our if is no longer a challenge to an aggressor. It has become a desperate excuse for our own powerlessness. European summits have become factories for producing grandiose declarations. Brussels tirelessly broadcasts its vision. If we double our semiconductor production with the CHIPS Act, if we achieve autonomy with the Critical Raw Materials Act, if we build a unified European missile defense system, then we will once again become a global superpower. But while Europe gets drunk on its own rhetoric, the world doesn't stand still. The USA, China, India, and the BRICS nations watch us with cold, hard pragmatism. Their response to our ambitious plans is short and devastating. If the rest of the world sees what the European political elite refuses to say out loud, they see that European sovereignty is a bureaucratic illusion built on 4 systemic lies. First, the technological fairy tale. The CHIPS Act promises dominance, but right now, in 2026, Europe doesn't have a single company capable of manufacturing the most advanced microchips. We are in the bizarre position of buying keys for a car we haven't even designed yet. Our so-called innovation too often just means regulating technologies that were actually developed by others. Second, our energy suicide. Let's be clear, without cheap energy, there is no industry. Full stop. We abandon cheap Russian resources only to beg Washington for expensive LNG and Beijing for batteries. The green transition has become deindustrialization disguised as morality. We simply exported our pollution, and now we pay the Chinese to sell us products made with the very coal we are ethically forbidden to touch. Third, the raw materials trap. We talk a big game about independence, yet China controls 90% of the processing for critical raw materials. Even if we opened a new mine in the heart of Europe tomorrow, the ore would still have to be shipped to Beijing for refinement. Europe lacks both the industrial capacity and the environmental tolerance to change this reality. Our autonomy is just a stack of paperwork. And finally, the military protectorate. We speak of a common defense, but in reality, we are a military protectorate of the United States. Without American satellites and logistics, most European armies would be blind and deaf within 48 hours. Our joint projects get stuck in endless arguments over which nation gets what slice of the profit. While the rest of the world is mass-producing technologies we are still just writing papers about. The world doesn't take us seriously because it sees the massive gap between our words and our capabilities. Our if is no longer a shield. It's a white flag wrapped in bureaucratic jargon. In the end, Philip of Macedon simply bypassed the Spartans. They became irrelevant. The exact same thing is happening to Europe. We are becoming a strategic observer of our own decline, a magnificent museum of past glory that is slowly being dismantled and bought, piece by piece, by others. In the great geopolitical game of 2026, there is no room for those who only know how to write declarations. There's a famous saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Unless Europe can move from the phrase, if we do, to raw, unapologetic action, to cheap energy, a real technological base, and genuine political unity, its if will remain nothing more than a final gasp before total irrelevance. The Spartan if was the beginning of a legend. The European if, it seems, is the beginning of the end. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective valuable, consider subscribing for more.